So this session is an orientation demo of the descriptive statistics as well as with the inferential statistics. No? So the use of descriptive statistics or inferential statistics will depend on the SOP or the statement of the problem. Okay, and before we proceed to the orientation demo, okay, it is very important that we have to complete all the details, particularly the data that we have coming from our responses. Say, for example, we have the part of our SOP is the determination of the demographic profile in terms of sex, or let's say in age group. Okay, and then we will be assigning a number, okay, for each of the choices. Let's say one for male and two for female. So it doesn't necessarily mean that one is always male, no? So, you can use it interchangeably. Ganun din sa age group. However, in the age group, since there is an order of the age, we have to arrange it according to the increasing or decreasing order of the age. Okay, say for example, we have the young adult, followed by the adult, and then we have the middle-aged adult. You can also start with the middle-aged adult as one, and then followed by adult, and number three is young adult. No? The important thing here is that it has to be presented in order, okay, of age. And then we also have the daily activity depending on the choices in our survey questionnaire. No? Say, for example, the daily activity is sedentary, light to active, moderate to active, and vigorous to active. So the order of presentation is based also on the intensity of the activity. Okay, so you cannot uh, transfer, okay, the sedentary to the middle portion of the choices. No? So that is how we prepare our data. And then from our responses, okay, in the survey questionnaire, we will then take note, okay, of what are the responses of the respondents from 1 to n. No? So in this example, it is only 100, but I believe uh, in your uh, in your sampling technique, okay, as well as with the computation of sample size, possibilities are the required number will be ranging from 200 to 385. Okay, and that depends on the type of respondents that you will be needing. Okay, so in here we have noted, let's say, the sex of respondent number one as one. Okay, it means that it is male, so on and so forth. Okay, and then the presentation of the answers of respondent number one should go across the columns. Okay, so let's say the respondent number one, okay, the age group is adult, and his daily activity is light active, and then the duration of exercise is 14 minutes, and he weighs 73 kilograms. So that is how we present the data coming from the survey questionnaire. Okay, we call this as a raw data. Raw data means it is not yet treated. Okay, it comes directly from our survey questionnaire. Okay, so we have to complete the data. Now there are also some part of the SOP that let's say determining the variable in terms of, okay, yung iba't ibang mga parameters niya or dimensions niya. Katulad nito, halimbawa, in the customer satisfaction, it is measured in terms of price and value. And then there is a corresponding question. No? So this will be question number 5. Okay, there are 5 questions all in all. Okay, so the question is, ano ipipresent natin pagdating sa descriptive statistics? It is only the average. We don't need the raw data, okay, to be presented in chapter 4. Okay, what we need is the average. Okay, so we get the responses, okay, of our, let's say, consumers, okay, and then we try to tally it in one spreadsheet, okay, so that we can make it ready for data analysis. Okay, so once you have completed the spreadsheet, okay, your raw data, okay, the next step is to prepare your Microsoft Excel for data analysis. It is because not all computers or laptops, okay, are activated with the data analysis tool. Okay, so we click the file, okay, and then we have the options, and then we will have a dialog box. You go to the lower left of the dialog box, which is the add-ins, and then on the lower portion we have manage Excel add-ins. You click go, and then make sure that the analysis tool pack is checked. Okay, and then you click OK. Okay, and then you can close the file and reopen the file, okay, and check whether the data analysis tool, okay, on the upper right portion of the spreadsheet, if it is already showing. It is because this will be the tool that we will be using for our inferential statistics. Okay, so that is the process of activating our data analysis tool. Okay. Now that we have the data analysis tool, okay, we have to look into the SOP. Okay. Say for example, your SOP number one is the determination, okay, of the profile of the respondents in terms of sex and in terms of age. So the method that we will be using is frequency distribution. It means that we will be just presenting the frequency of male and female, the frequency of young adult, adult, and middle-aged adult. No? So, paano ito ginawa? Okay? Does that mean that we have to count the number one, okay, and number two in the data? Okay, so the shortcut method is to use the pivot table. Okay, so let us have an example. Okay, so we have to click insert, and then we have on the upper left we have the pivot table, and then we select the table range. Okay, so in our case, our table range, we go to the data, okay, and then we highlight from the number going to the uh, last column of the data, okay, and then we click the location, okay, and then i-click natin dun sa gusto natin paglagyan ng pivot table. Okay, so we have okay. Okay, so we now have a pivot table, okay, wherein you can select on the pivot table fields ano yung kailangan nating data. Okay, the first one, okay, based on the problem is about the sex. So we click the sex. Okay, and then we drag the sex into the rows. Okay, so it shows that there are 47 with a label of 1 and 106 with a label of 2. This is the sum, no? So what we need is the frequency distribution, okay? So for us to be able to get the frequency distribution, we have to change the values instead of sum, kasi ang default niya is the sum. So we have to click the value field settings, and then what we need is the count. Okay? So bibilangin niya yung male, bibilangin niya yung female. And then you click OK. So this is now our data. You can change this now into male, and then we have the female. So now we have the frequency distribution for the male and female. How about if we would like to get the data for the age? Okay? Siguro i-present muna natin ito. Transfer natin. Ito rin siya. Okay? How about if we would like to present it in terms of age? Okay? So, we unclick the sex, we click the age group, okay? And then we click and drop it to the rows, and then we change the sum of age group to the count of age group. Then we click OK. Okay? So, in label number 1, 1 is young adult, So we can change this now into young adult, then we have adult, and then we have the middle aged adult. Okay, so that is how we present the data. So we can present this, okay, using this format. Okay, kung maalala natin, the format or the APA format for the table, we have the table number, okay, and then the title, okay, it's presented in italics, and then we have the data. So that is how we present the frequency distribution. So that is for the profile of the respondents. No? What if we would like to present, okay, the result, okay, of the customer satisfaction in terms of price and value? Okay, so what we need is only the average. How do we get this average? We have it is equal to, okay, the average of the values of question numbers 1 to 5, and then we click OK, and then we drag and drop here. Okay, so now that we have computed the average, we have to compute for the grand mean. Okay, so that it will represent, that value will represent the customer satisfaction in time, in terms of price and value. Okay, so we have to click the average, and then it will suggest that it will average the data that is highlighted. You just click enter, and then the value is 3.952. So if we will be transferring, for example, okay, for the price and value, so we have 3.952 or 3.95. So we have 3.95, and then you make a verbal interpretation. And based on our discussion before, okay, on how we assign the verbal interpretation, it will be based on the scale that we have prepared in chapter 3. Say, for example, we have here, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, we have the presentation of the scale, okay. So depending on the scale that we are using, so let's say 1 to 1.79 is a scale of 1, 1.8 to 2.59 a scale of 2, so on and so forth, and whatever is assigned to that particular scale, okay, whatever parameter is assigned to that particular scale, then that will be the verbal interpretation. So in this case, let's say if we are talking about the level of satisfaction, this will be extremely satisfied, very satisfied, moderately satisfied, slightly satisfied, and not satisfied. Okay, so that is how we assign the verbal interpretation. So that is in the case of SOP. Usually in SOP number 1, what is the profile of the respondents in terms of sex or age? Then this is how we present the frequency distribution. Okay, now how about if there are inferential questions? Let's say, is there a significant difference, okay, on the daily activity when grouped according to their demographic profile? Okay, going back to our data, the demographic profile that we have is only the sex and the age group. Okay, so let us start with the sex. Since we are talking about two variables, we have the responses of male and we have the female, it will just be a choice between t-test and z-test. Okay, so t-test, we will be using t-test if the respondents are less than 30 or the responses are less than 30. But then if it is 30 or more, then we will be using z-test. So in this case, since going back to our data, okay, the profile of the male and female, 47, 53, both of which, okay, beyond are beyond the minimum requirement of 30, then we will be using z-test. Okay. Now, how do we extract the data from the raw data? No? So how do we extract the answers of the male and the answers of the female? Okay, so going back to the data, we will be needing a filter. No? So we highlight, okay, the data. Okay, up to the bottom, and then we click filter. Okay, so we have data, and then we click filter. So it will create a filter, okay, at the top portion of our data. Okay. So since it will be a comparison of male and female, let us start with the male. So we filter number 1. So all of the responses of male, okay, will be presented. Okay. Say for example, our problem is about the daily activity. Okay. So the responses on daily activity of male respondents, we copy and then we paste. Okay. So that is how we present it. Okay. And then for female, just the same. We try to filter the sex into 2. And then again, we highlight the daily activity. And then we paste it to our table. Okay. So we already have a data for the male and female, and we can see that the number of male and female is not equal. So we have 47 male, and then we have 53 female. Okay. So the first requirement, okay, for z-test is for us to be able to determine first the variance. No? So we type in the variance here, okay, and then we determine the variance by clicking equal sign, and then var, and then open close. We highlight the data. So from data number 1 up to the bottom portion of the table, and then we click OK. So it means that the variance of the data for male is 0.9510. Okay, and then we just copy and paste, okay, for the female. Okay, so we have copied the formula. So we have 0.7329. Okay, now that we have computed for the variance, we are now ready to compute for the z-test. Okay, so we will be needing the p-value, okay, of the result of the z-test, okay, so that we could be able to analyze and interpret it later. No? So in the upper right portion, we have the data analysis. Under the data tab, we have the data analysis, and then we select. Okay, this is arranged alphabetically, yung ating mga analysis tools. Okay, so we can use the click the z-test to sample for means, and then we click OK. And then the first input is the variable 1 range. Okay, so i-click lang natin itong ating variable 1 range, and then we go to the responses of the male. Okay, so click natin yung male, and then we click shift pababa, okay, to highlight the whole set of data for male. Okay, and then variable 2, we do the same for female. Shift and hold until the last data for female, and then we leave the hypothesized mean difference as blank, and then we type in the variance that we have computed a while ago. So we have 0.9510 for male, and the variable 2 is 0.7329. And then since we have highlighted the label for male and female, we check the labels. Okay, and then the output range. Okay, so we click it. Okay, kung saan natin gustong ilagay yung ating table, and then we click OK. So this is the result of the z-test to sample for means. So ang kailangan lang nating interpret dito is the p-value for two-tail. So we try to highlight this, okay, and then we compare it to the p-alpha, which is always 0.05. Okay, whether the p-value is greater than or less than the p-alpha. Okay, so in this case, the p-value is greater than, mas mataas itong na-compute nating p-value doon sa ating p-alpha. It means that we have to accept the null hypothesis. Kung naalala ninyo yung inyong hypothesis, okay, presented in chapter 1, okay, it is a statement of non-significance, okay, and based on the result, it is to be accepted or rejected. No? So in this case, since the p-value is higher than the alpha, which is 0.05, okay, the null hypothesis is accepted. Okay, therefore, there is no significant difference on the variable. Dito na papasok yung ating analysis and interpretation. Anong sabi rito? There is no significant difference on the daily activity of male and female at 5% level of significance. Kung babalikan natin ang ating problem, ang tanong niya, is there a significant difference on the daily activity when grouped according to sex? So it is a comparison between male and female. And because of the p-value, okay, that is greater than the alpha, we can now make an interpretation that there is no significant difference on the daily activity of male and female at 5% level of significance. Saan ang galing yung 5%? Yun yung 0.05 na kinompare natin kanina. Okay? And then we make an interpretation. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo in chapter 4, that it is not enough that we present the data, but we have to make an analysis, we have to make an interpretation. So what will be our interpretation? The finding shows, okay, that the employees have the same level of activity due to the nature of the work in the office. Okay? So since there is no significant difference, ibig sabihin pare-pareho lang sila ng activity, mapababae o mapalalaki. And then we make a cross-reference. So hahanap na tayo ng mga literature natin coming from the RRL, okay? And whether it is a related study or related literature, in this case, the findings is similar to the study of De La Cruz et al. 2023. The researcher emphasized that while research does show some general trends in activity levels between genders, it is essential to avoid making broad assumptions and instead focus on the unique characteristics of each individual. Though discuss some considerations on the activity of both male and female, such as biological difference, sociocultural, occupational, and lifestyle factors, individual preferences, and aging and life stages. So dito, in-explain, okay, at in-interpret natin yung result, okay, as presented in our findings. Okay? So, coming from this analysis and interpretation, we can now make a conclusion. Okay? Conclusion number 1, there is no significant difference on the daily activity of male and female. And conclusion number 2, male and female respondents have the same level of activity in life and work. Okay? So that is how we interpret and draw conclusions based on the z-test. Okay? So again, z-test is used, okay, for two groups of responses. In this case, since we are talking about sex, then it is about a comparison between the daily activity of male and female. That's why we have used z-test. Okay? Now, another SOP, okay, is there a significant difference on the daily activity when grouped according to age? Okay, going back to the data, we have three groups, okay, or three brackets presented in the age group. We have the young adult, we have the adult, and we have the middle-aged adult. Okay, so the use of t-test. We can also use t-test here. However, it will be a comparison between young adult, then adult and middle-aged adult, and then young adult and middle-aged adult. So we have to conduct three z-tests for this matter. Okay. So it will be too laborious. Okay. So what we can do, okay, for three or more groups of responses, then we can use what we call the analysis of variance. Okay, so it is used for three or more group of responses. Okay? So how do we get the data? Again, we try to filter, okay, our data, not in sex, but now in the age group. So, filter natin yung number 1, and then we copy the, ano yung hinahanap kanina? The daily activity, okay? Daily activity of young adult, and then copy and paste, and then we have 2 for the adult, okay? Again, we get the data, and then we filter the data for the middle-aged adult, then we copy and paste the data, okay, to our table. So this is our table, okay. So we can see that we have more adult, okay, than the uh, middle-aged, and then the last is the young adult. Okay, so that this is how we present our data for analysis of variance. Okay, so again, ANOVA is used for 3 or more responses or group of responses. Okay, so how do we compute for the analysis of variance? Okay, so again, we highlight the data, okay, until the end of the data, and then we click data analysis, and then it will be on the first part, okay, ANOVA single factor, and then the input range, we highlight the data, and then since we have highlighted, including the labels, we check the labels in first row, okay, and then we have the output range, you click it, and then kung saan mo gustong ilagay yung table mo, let's say dito muna sa ilalim, and then we click OK. So, ito yung lumabas na data. Ano lang ang kailangan natin dyan? This one. Okay? So, 7.6, okay, raised to the exponent negative 28. So, since the exponent is negative 28, it means that it's 0.00000. Okay? So, in essence, it is 0. Okay? Kasi akala nila, if we will be comparing 7 to 0.05, ay sobrang taas nito as compared to the 0.05, no? But then since meron tayong exponent, yun yung nakikita nating e minus 28, it means that it is 0.000. Then after the 28 zeros, okay, saka palang lalabas yung 7 and 6. Okay? So in essence, this is actually 0. So it is less than the alpha. Okay? So, at first, we test it at 0.05. Okay? But then, since siya ay mas mababa pa sa 0.05, then we test it with 0.01. And still, 0.000, okay, is still less than the 0.01. Then we use the 0.01 alpha. Okay? So, the null hypothesis is accepted since it is less than the alpha 0.01. There is a significant difference on the variables. No? So, kung titignan nga natin yung data, yung average niya, sadya naman may pagkakaiba. Ang average ng young adult is 3.37. Ang adult ay 2.3. And then, ang middle-aged adult ay 1.375. Ano napansin natin? Mas active yung mga young adult followed by the adult, at medyo inactive na yung ating mga middle-aged adult. Okay? So that is how we interpret it. Okay? So there is a significant difference, okay, on the daily activity of young, which is 3.38, adult 2.36, and middle-aged adult 1.38, at kanina 0.01 ang ginamit natin. So this will be 1% level of significance. The findings, okay, shows that the employees having varying level of activity. A trend may be observed as the age increases, the level of activity decreases. So habang tumatanda, ang level of activity niya ay bumababa. Okay, so we look again to our RRL, okay, that would support this study. And lumalabas according to Cruz et al. 2023, young adults often have more energy and may engage in higher intensity physical activities such as sports, recreational activities, and exercise routines. As individuals transition into adulthood, their responsibilities may increase, including work demands and family obligations, and this can impact the time of available for physical activity. And the middle-aged adults often face increased work and family commitments, which can lead to the reduced time for physical activity. Okay? So that is how we make an analysis and interpretation. Okay? So what can we draw? What conclusions can we draw from this analysis and interpretation? Number one, there is a significant difference on the daily activity of young adult, adult, and middle-aged adult. And number two, as the age increases, the level of activity decreases. So that is how we present the conclusion. Okay? And that is for significant difference. Okay? So ulitin natin, ang Z-test ginagamit natin for two groups of responses, okay, with 30 or more respondents, no? And then analysis of variance is used for three or more, okay, responses, three or more groups of variables, okay, regardless of how many respondents we have. Okay, so it is analysis of variance. So these are the different tests that we can use, okay, if the inferential question is about looking for a significant difference on the variables when grouped according to their demographic profile. Now, there are some cases wherein the number or the count, okay, of variables is less than 10. Okay? Just like in this example. Okay? Assuming, okay, that the number of young adults is just 8 and the number of adult is 60 and the count of middle-aged adult is 32. Okay? So can we still use analysis of variance for this? No? The answer is no. It is because comparing the count of adult and middle-aged adult, okay, the number of young adult is way too low. Okay, so that is the instance that you will have to consult me. You have to visit me and consult me on how we could be able to merge the data. Okay, because of this case. Okay, so what we will do is that let's say since we only have less than 10 young adults, we can add it to the adult so that we can still use the data. Okay. So the data will then be the young adult and adult, and the value is 68. Comparing it with our middle-aged adult. Okay, so the value is still 68. The grand total is still 100. Okay. However, since we only have two variables, the young adult and the other group of respondents is middle-aged adult, we cannot use the analysis of variance anymore. That is the time that we will be using the Z-test. Okay. So again, if there are a number of responses, okay, that are lower than 10, okay, you will have to visit me and consult with me on how we could be able to merge the data, okay, for the purpose of inferential statistics. What if our statement of the problem calls for the determination of a significant relationship between variables? Say, for example, in this case, we would like to determine if there is a significant relationship between the duration of exercise and weight. Okay? Ibig sabihin ba, pag tinaasan ba natin o tinagalan natin yung pag-exercise, it means that we will have a weight loss. Okay? So we can prove this using the Pearson correlation. I believe that Pearson correlation is not new to most of you. Okay? It is because you have already used the Pearson correlation, particularly in our pilot test, to determine the reliability of the survey questionnaire being used. So in this inferential question, it states that is there a significant relationship between the duration of exercise and weight? So it is a determination of the relationship of one variable to another variable. Okay. Now, going back to our data, we copy and paste the required data. So in this case, it is all about the duration of exercise of 100 respondents and the weight of the respondents, from 1 to 100. So we just copy and paste the data, from 1 to 100, and then we copy it here. Okay. Now that we have the data, we can now use again we can now click the data analysis, and then we look for correlation. And then we click OK, and then we highlight the input range will be the whole data, okay, from top to bottom, labels in first row, and then the output range, we place it just below our table, and then we click OK. So in this case, we have here a 0.71968. Okay, so we have to look into this table for us to be able to make an interpretation. No? So if the value is 0, or close to 0, there is no linear relationship, meaning automatically we will accept the null hypothesis. Okay? But then if it reaches 0.3, mas mataas sa 0.3 o mas mababa siya sa negative 0.30, it means that we have to accept, reject the null hypothesis. And for us to be able to determine the level of relationship, then we have to determine what is the correlation R value. Okay? If the correlation R value is greater than 0.3, then it means it has a weak positive linear relationship. If it is greater than 0.5, then there is a moderate positive linear relationship. And then 0.7, a strong positive linear relationship, and exactly at 1 is a perfect positive linear relationship. The same is true if there is a negative relationship. Okay? If it is negative 0.30, it will be a weak negative linear relationship. If it is negative 0.5, a moderate negative linear relationship. And negative 0.7, a strong negative linear relationship. And exactly negative 1, a perfect negative linear relationship. So if we round this off, negative 0.72, ito yon, yung in-highlight natin. And then we look for the interpretation, it is higher than 0.7, but it is not a positive one. Okay? So, still, it is a strong positive linear relationship. Okay? So, it means that in our analysis and interpretation, the correlation coefficient is equal to negative 0.72. Null hypothesis is rejected. There is a strong negative linear relationship between the variables, and there is a strong negative linear relationship between the duration of exercise and weight. It implies that when people exercise for longer periods, their weight tends to decrease. Habang tinatagalan natin yung exercise, bumababa ang weight ng tao. And this relationship follows a linear pattern. So the result is the same with the study of Doe 2023. Again, naglagay tayo ng cross-reference, that supports our study, where it is consistent with their findings that increased physical activity can contribute to weight loss. It emphasizes the causal effect of longer exercise duration on weight reduction. This is a common understanding in the context of weight management, as extended exercise sessions often result in burning more calories and can contribute to a calorie deficit, which is essential for weight loss. So this explains the result or the findings of the study. So for our conclusion, there is a strong negative linear relationship between the duration of exercise and weight, and increasing the duration of exercise promotes weight loss. So that is for the Pearson correlation.